Was Ryan Routh, the suspect in the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, groomed by the CIA? Well, we're learning a lot more about this clown this morning, including that he had a book out that you can read if you'd like, his self-published book. It's called Ukraine's Unwinnable War, in which he urged Iran to assassinate Donald Trump. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The very first Twitter account that followed his Twitter account is an ex-CIA agent. Was this his handler? We don't know. The deep state constantly uses useful idiots like Ryan Routh. So what do we know about the CIA and how the CIA deploys these useful idiots? Let's ask a former CIA agent. Michael Scheuer spent 22 years working at the CIA. He's written 4 books on how America needs to get out of these conflicts around the world, including Ukraine and the Middle East, and focus instead on the United States of America. That has to piss off a lot of people at the CIA, and that's why we'd love to have Michael on the show. Michael, welcome back. Good to see you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
So just when you started to see these details emerging about Ryan Routh, he's not some just random lone gunman guy with an axe to grind. All of these connections are starting to emerge. Did that surprise you, and what do you make of it?
Well, I don't think it can surprise us too much, and I think most Americans may be surprised by it, but it's simply because the media doesn't cover it. Both the United States Special Forces and the CIA's paramilitary groups one of their major jobs is training foreigners who we want to help win or want to do a particular job for us. There's a lot of hoo-ha about special forces, paramilitary forces in the United States. They can't win wars. Their fighting is important in certain tactical instances, like killing bin Laden, if that happened. But what they mostly used for is for training foreigners in the Ukraine, in Vietnam, everywhere in the world, that there is a chance for the federal government in this country to get us involved in somebody's cause that they like. Those people are there. And grooming is mostly just, training. They become proficient in arms, proficient in tactics. But personal friendships is an enormous amount of espionage. And you recruit people as your agents at the agency, at the Defense Intelligence Agency, at the Special Forces. One of the characteristics you're looking for is an ability to project themselves as friends, as colleagues. And so it's not all that a complicated process. It's expensive. And sometimes it doesn't work. If you bet on the wrong horse, like this character in Florida, you put a whole lot of money and a whole lot of time into something that didn't work. But that's basically the way it goes. Grooming, I guess grooming is a good enough word for it. You're grooming people to be fighters first, clever people tactically, and most of all, loyal to their backers. So it's kind of an espionage development of a person, but it's also a military one. And, languages are always a problem. You're never quite sure about what's going on around you. And so the idea that people can become investors in their own work is possible. But also someone you trained 3 years ago, you may run into a situation where you have a use for them now. And with the money that any U.S. government agency can offer for a job, whether it's gathering intelligence or killing somebody, those people generally are going to be it's going to be hard for them to refrain from doing our bidding.
One of the things that emerged with this guy almost immediately was the scrubbing of his social media accounts. They were removed, edited, deleted, and then we found information that was then post-added to certain articles from weeks ago. And you can see this by going through the Wayback Machine, that things have been manipulated about his record and his history. It's all very interesting. And would that be something the CIA would also do and be a part of when you're grooming someone, using someone like this, is really try to use the internet and make sure that the narrative is out there correctly?
Well, certainly they would use it, yes. I have to say I left in 2004, which was a little bit before the devastatingly effective way people can control your thoughts or your ideas or project a picture of you on the internet today and social media. So I would think today that would not be a problem. It's a little bit hard for me to believe that someone traceable to the agency would use their name or a name that's known to be used by them in terms of going to social media. But I can't say that couldn't happen. I just would find it surprisingly bad tradecraft.
One of the other things that has emerged that they now, according to sources, Ryan Routh visited Fort Bragg dozens of times in the past few years, which is where the U.S. Army Psychological Operations Unit is located at Fort Bragg. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm not sure this guy is very much engaged in psychological operations, but what he went there for was that's the home of our special forces. And he might have trained there with them, or a refresher course perhaps in the last several years. But he's clearly on the side of what the Defense Department and the president want, which is the war in Ukraine. And so he probably would have been welcomed there. I think, the other thing you should think about, not you, but I mean generally people should think about, is that the man claims to have an income of only $3,000 a month, and yet he flew first class from Hawaii to Florida, which is about, I heard this morning on the radio, about $7,000. He was arrested at one point for controlling an undefined weapon of mass destruction, and the judge gave him a misdemeanor for that, which is it screams that someone from Washington intervened in the thing to say, he's our guy, we need him, don't put him away forever, which probably would have been the punishment. So there's red flags all over the place. I think it's a disgrace, but it's appalling but not surprising, Clayton. It's the way the game is played these days.
Deeply disturbing on a day when we have this major attack against Hezbollah in Lebanon and the United States agitating for war both against Russia and Iran. And then conveniently, over the past few weeks, we've heard in the mainstream media that they've broken up a cell that was trying to assassinate President Trump. These were a Pakistani who had ties to Iran. And now we have a book that he's written where he's asking Iran to assassinate Trump. It just all sounds so convenient.
Oh, it is. Don't think for a moment that it's all coincidence. The one thing you learn, I learned in my life at least, and I learned especially at the agency, is coincidences are very, very rare. You have a coincidence in your life where you forget to put the coffee pot under the perker, and so you get it all over your floor or your counter. But in the real world, coincidences are not very common. This thing was played through. He had a car with stolen plates. He had a rifle with an obliterated identification number on it, and he was not from Florida. Serial number, yes, sir. And he was not from Florida, so he could not have bought that rifle in Florida, being an out-of-stater, unless they had given him Florida documents, which is not impossible. And he could not have brought it on the airplane. So he had lots of help. And he also had, apparently, I would guess, I think the strongest guess is he had someone in Trump's entourage, because they say the golf date was kind of a spontaneous thing, early in the morning or early in the afternoon, and so there was not a lot of time. So somebody close to him
leaked it,
or leaked that it was going to happen at some point tomorrow, and then they refined the time when they found out exactly when he was going. But it's there's CIA people probably around Trump. There's FBI people around Trump. There's good and bad about that. If they're loyal, it's fine. If not, they're an enormous danger. There's politicians around the time, and a lot of politicians say they like him, but they just as soon see him dead, because if he gets into power, it's going to upset the gravy train for them. And we have almost unlimited numbers of Democrats who have called for, Jamie Raskin says we have to have civil war conditions if Trump wins. One of them called today, and I don't remember the man's name, but that he needs to be eliminated. There's been this has been a current refrain in the Democratic Party and in the mainstream media since Trump entered the race in 2016. So it's hardly surprising. What is surprising is the failure to protect him. Not only is he a presidential candidate, but he's the presumed next president at the time, given the information we have from polling and that kind of thing.
The polling right now looks absolutely like a landslide in the Electoral College right now for Trump, in Trump's favor. They are deeply scared about this. There are,
and as they should, they are an evil criminal bunch, and the price for that should be prison, and in some cases, if you can prove treason, which is hard to do, hanging. I would prefer public hanging to make the message clear to a lot of people that we don't fool around with overthrowing presidents or killing presidents or overthrowing governments. We're in the middle, Clayton, in a way, of a very fine civics lesson for the American people about how this system needs to be cleared up. And whether that message comes through loud and clear, I don't know. But I think this is a key break in the deep state's armor, because the signs are everywhere. It's going to be hard to corral them first and then bury them, because they seem to be popping up with some regularity. And I have to say, the policeman and the police officer, the chief in Florida, really called, without being very blatant about it, really called the tune, that there's too many things here to make it a lone gunner.
Right. I think it's clear. You know, when we first started reporting this story, someone in our chat room said they're going to make it a conspiracy. So we're not making it a conspiracy. All of these signs point that it is a conspiracy. And the real concern...
Road to know what's going on here, sir. You know, you don't have to be Sherlock. It is clear as hell. And one of the reasons they're screaming about it so much is because they know it's clear as hell.
And I'm concerned as we head into October that they're not finished yet trying this. They've tried it in Butler.
They may be finished, Clayton, with shooters, but not with a truck bomb or a aerial weapon of some kind. And they can blame it on anybody. They've got all the gangsters in the country they need, and they can set them up. The FBI specialty is setting up Muslim terrorists. They get one not very bright Muslim suggest an operation. He goes out and gets some dumber Muslims, and then at the last moment, the FBI picks him up and calls it a victory against terrorism. So there's lots of other options out there, and it depends on how many people they're willing to kill as to what option. Right now, they seem focused just on him, but if it's his family, if it's his children, if it's a bunch of people who just work for him, I think there's no hesitation on the part of the Democrats to preserve what they have, to killing more than one person.
It's deeply disturbing. And when you know the history of what they've done to JFK and what they've done to Martin Luther King, the list is fairly endless at this point, and they will not stop. I hate to keep saying it, but you're seeing it. The evidence is overwhelming at this point that they will do whatever they can to keep Trump from winning. They're going to pull out all the stops.
It all flows, Clayton, from the decision made after the Second World War that we were going to control the affairs of the world, and that we were going to call the tune for third world countries and European countries. It all comes out of war. Americans are so used to war that they allow the government to do whatever it says is necessary to do overseas. Ukraine, we don't have a single interest in Ukraine except for what the elites want. They want what the guy from South Carolina, the senator, said, $12 billion worth of rare minerals in the ground there. We want to push the Russians into starting a war, and we succeeded in doing that. So the American people really have to get the idea that we don't have presidents anymore. We have warlords. Warlords who can take this country, all 360 million of us, into a war, a little one or a huge one, anytime he wants, because the Congress has abdicated its sole responsibility under the Constitution for declaring war. They pass a bill that says we give you the power. Well, that's not delegatable according to the Constitution. But it allows the Congress to say, well, we warned him against it, but he did it anyway. Or if we win, the Congress can say, hurrah, we supported him and he wouldn't have done this without us. No good. We have not had a constitutional conflict in this country since December the 8th, 1941. They all have been anti-constitutional, non-constitutional, in fact. Much more dreaded power than a simple, a corrupted policeman or a corrupted general or whatever, or something like that, a normal everyday thing. When you have a president that can take you to war without any checks or balances, and to accelerate that war as Biden and his people have done gradually in the Ukraine, you're not a free country. You're in the chains of a warlord. And it's time that Americans face it.
And hope Americans wake up. I hope people vote. I hope we can make and effect a massive change in this country. Michael Scheuer, we appreciate you joining us. I think your expertise in this is second to none, and we are in very, very scary times as they try to drag us into war with Russia and Iran simultaneously. Michael,
you're right.
Great to see you.
A pleasure, sir. Thank you kindly for having me.